Good day. This is Bob Abrahamson at Waltron, and welcome to another episode of View from the Road, where I talk with some of my colleagues at Waltron who are always on the road across the country, visiting with clients and getting a report out from what they're hearing from the marketplace. And today I'm joined by Howard Reid. So, Howard, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what your title is, and what you've been doing with Waltron since you joined the team?
Thanks, Bob. My name is Howard Reid. I am the Southeast Regional Sales Technician for Waltron. That means I am in charge of Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, and the West Coast of Tennessee.
As they say, that's a lot of dirt. You're covering a lot of ground for us, Howard. Thanks so
Sure.
much. What have you, when we were prepping for this call, you mentioned a lot of interest and I guess some concerns about silica analyzers, primarily for some of your paper and pulp mill clients. So what's going on out there? Our viewers know what you're hearing in the marketplace.
Yes. So yeah, Bob, what we have in the marketplace right now, our 3141 Silica Analyzer is brand new to the market. We've been having a Silica Analyzer for a while, but we decided to revamp everything and make it new, nice and sleek. I am hearing that in the road right now. A lot of the technicians that are working on our stuff, they love the ease of use. They love the fact that it's self-calibrating. So basically you just have to press one button and boom, it automatically calibrates. They love the fact that the wet section is toolless, and which is great because who wants to be in the middle of summer here in Louisiana when it's really hot in the summer and you have to work on these analyzers in the heat? You want to deal with the least amount of tools possible.
All right, let's break this down a little bit. We'll talk about this toolless feature. First off, what does that mean? How does that compare to maybe some of the competition or some of the products out there that may not be toolless?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we have our wet section, which basically makes all the magic happen, is like what I like to say. Our wet section, we made it as easy as possible for the technicians to actually do their job. Because a lot of times, especially the trend nowadays, is that it's really high turnover in a lot of these areas, especially with water chemistry. We tried to make this as easy as possible so that a regular technician can come in and change these pump heads. So what we did is that we decided to take away all of the screws. They're screws, but the screws are just using these two tools yourself. Everybody's got them, hands. And basically that's what you use to take out what we have something's called a pre-tube pump head. So basically it's just the front of the pump. It's a peristaltic pump that it's already pre-tubed. All you have to do is pop out those tubes. You undo the screws with your thumbs and boom, put a new one in and you're ready to go. I like to call it a pit stop.
Okay, so the other products out there, people need, I guess, a screwdriver. It's a smaller connection, I'm guessing, and so it takes a little bit more time. Is that what you're hearing? Clients are saving time in doing the switchover?
Well, yes, definitely. And especially with we also have bigger diameter straws than the competition. So basically, that's going to help with any kind of reagent that's stuck in your tubes, especially if you have a shutdown. If there's any kind of reagent left in there, it's going to crystallize. That can happen in anybody's stuff. However, you have a little bit more time with ours. And then the cool thing also is that we have a light that's inside. I went to a paper mill and they told me that having a light inside might seem, oh yeah, my refrigerator has a light, but why do they do that? So you could see better inside. We make it to where we have our wet section is completely independent from the actual electronics of it. So what we try to do with that is we learned from some of our competitions where they have the tool section, the wet section right next to the electronics, and electronics and water don't mix. So
Right.
basically we learned from that mistake and we have our wet section separated from the electronics section. Now, and then with having that light inside, you can actually see everything. Because a lot
Yeah.
of times you have to get some kind of headlight, which is cool. We all have headlights and stuff, but what happens if you're trying to get a component way in there and then you're trying to get your head into the cabinet? Having a headlight, that's not really going to work. You're going to hit up against certain things. So having a light right there. Another thing, and a lot of people don't think about, is having this light is really bright. So if you open the cabinet, a lot of times in these paper mills, it's very dark where they put these analyzers.
Right.
So if you open up the door, automatically shines so you can see every little nook and cranny that's around. Let's say you have a pallet noise, especially in a lot of these mills. You try to put a pallet down because there's standing water, but if you can't see that pallet, you go up to the analyzer, you trip over it. We have a light here now to help you with that.
Analyzers come with a refrigerator type light, which you don't find in the competition. And there's two benefits to that. You can see what you're doing independently of having to bring in your own flashlight or headlight lamp into that situation. So it's just, again, we talk about Waltron being easy to maintain, and this is one way we make it easy to maintain by having a light incorporated into the products. When you open the door, you can actually see the innards of this analyzer. The second benefit is it's a fairly bright light. So just like if you go into a dark kitchen in the middle of the night and you open up your refrigerator, you get a lot of illumination. Same principle, but it's revealing things that may be lying around these analyzers in dark places in a paper mill. So there's a safety benefit there as well. Pretty good encapsulation. Okay, so you mentioned something else I want to pull on that string. You mentioned separation of the wet section from the electronics. You mentioned water and electronics don't mix. We've all learned that from when we were children. So explain what's going on with some of the competition. You mentioned it, don't name names, but like what is not working in their design? What is that causing to happen? And then how did Waltron solve for that issue of keeping the wet section separate from the electronics? So talk a little bit about that.
For sure. Yeah, in some of our competitions analyzers, you'll have the wet section, which is basically where all the water, all your samples running through, right next to where the computer and the motherboard is at. So you have a lot of this water, and there's a lot of little bitty fittings. It's very easy to break those fittings. If you break one fitting, sometimes the water shoots out, you already messed up the motherboard.
Okay.
Or you also have where this is Louisiana again, it's very hot. Sometimes this wet section also sweats, just like I sweat. And like I said, it's right next to that motherboard. So of course, water, computers don't mix. And so what we did with our design is that we just separated the two. We have our computer slash motherboard section behind, and it's separated by a whole plate. And there's a plate in front of it. So a whole steel plate that's separating the actual components.
Okay. All right. So in general operation, you're keeping your water and your moisture away from the electronics, so you have less chance of frying that motherboard, I'm assuming. And then also, when you have to go in the maintenance to these wet section, you're removing the ability of, oh, I made a mistake and now water spraying everywhere. It's not going to spray in that computer. So there's definitely, I'm imagining it's probably a pretty significant cost savings from what I understand that those motherboards can cost. And then to have to go in and replace them is no simple task either. And one other thing popped into my mind. You mentioned something about the diameter of the straws, and I'm a layman. I don't quite understand. Explain to me, and probably most of the people watching this know what this is about. But in case someone doesn't, spend a little bit of time talking about what are you talking about? What's the straw? When does it come into play? What's the advantage of having this thicker straw? It sounds like it clogs less often, but why don't you let me know what that's all about?
For sure. Basically, with silica specifically, we use a technology called colorimeter. So you're using reagents that drop into a flow cell, and it uses a light to measure the color. And in this case, it's blue. It's measuring the silica, how much of that blue is in the water, and sending that back as a milliamp output. In order to make those drops, there's these itty bitty straws that has to go through. We also know that, just like I mentioned before, there's a lot of turnover in a lot of these places. So whenever there's a plant that goes down, so no water's going through, our colorimeter analyzer actually has a float switch. So this switch, whenever there's no sample, it'll go down and put the analyzer in standby.
Okay.
That's a great feature also. But having these tubes, let's say that you're down for maybe about a week or two. That's about all it needs in order for these really thin straws that, like I said, it has these reagents that pump through it. Now, these little straws, sometimes they get clogged up. Normally, what you're supposed to do is come by with demineralized water and then flush those straws out. But we all know when there's a turnaround or when there's a problem, all hands on deck. So we don't have really time to send a technician out. We know that here in Waltron. So we accounted for this. Now, that's not to say not to flush out your lines, but you have a little bit more time with us.
I get you. So, you mean flushing out the lines is a standard maintenance procedure that you have to do. You're not saying stop doing that. What you're saying is you have to do it less often with Waltron.
Yes, for sure.
So again, and especially if you're having issues with staffing, it's just that much less burden that we're putting on our operator plants.
For sure, definitely.
Right. So what's some of the feedback that you've received from folks that are taking a look, maybe trying these out in their plants? What are you hearing from some of your clients or prospects?
A couple weeks ago, I went to a plant and we installed some of our analyzers. And the very first thing of feedback, I opened the box and they see how sleek it looks. Normally, when you talk about analyzers, it's not really anything that grabs your attention, right? But these definitely do. They're very sleek. A lot of emphasis was put on the design and the look of everything and being modern.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first thing I heard. Man, these look awesome. Top of the line, just the look, just opening the box. I didn't even see it work yet. They were already impressed by the look.
Well, that's something we've certainly learned from Steve Jobs and Apple,
Yeah.
and just the look, the feel, that in and of itself can definitely instill confidence in folks that this isn't something just slapped together. It's something that they took care. Waltron's been around for over 120 years. So we've certainly refined our processes and we bring a lot to the table. We are the experts in water chemistry. We've been doing this longer than anybody out there. And our products are meant and designed to reflect that expertise. And so it's nice to hear and get that feedback.
For sure, definitely. What I like about the 3141 is I consider myself also a technician. So anything to make my life easier in the field, I always like it. And that's one thing that Waltron brings to the table. Ease of use and the sleekness. And also we're very, very accurate. I would have to say a lot of times I have to go in and actually commission these analyzers and very accurate. We're hearing that in the road a lot.
It's great. Yeah, it's important. That's why people are buying these. They've got to be accurate and reliable to the tiniest degree. I was talking with Greg Macy, your client, about that, and he was just explaining different technology. I was looking at dissolved oxygen, it was just going down to the PBBs and all that stuff. It's an education for me. So reliable, accurate, as well as easy to use the whole Waltron package. So it's good to get validation out there. Anything else that you wanted to share regarding Silica or Waltron in general? You don't have to. I just want to give you an opportunity to share some final thoughts if you have any.
I guess my final thought is just give Waltron a try, especially if you're the person who's listening to this. If you are on the fence with Waltron, call us up, look us up. There are other water quality measurement out there. So basically here in the South, I've just been showing people who Waltron is. A lot of times people don't even know there's another company other than our competitions. And so basically that's what I'm here for. I'm here to spread the good news of Waltron. Give us a try. You definitely won't be unhappy that you did.
I've come on board to help out with the marketing and raise awareness. Waltron is not the biggest player on the block. We've got a significant resource behind us, and the quality and again the expertise that comes with just doing this for as long as we have, it's unparalleled. Howard, thanks so much for your time. I know that you're busy. I know you're probably going to get out road to your next destination.
Sure.
I do appreciate you taking the time with me today.
No problem. Thanks, Bob.
All right.